And I sort of fell on the notion of motivation, and maybe not so much from the psychological standpoint, because neither one of us are psychologists by trade. But we're definitely going to fall into that. But there's something that I've been sitting on, and I'm sure I'm going to end up repurposing this. And if I screw this up live and on the air, like I said, it's the beauty of podcast. There could be a slip of the tongue. But I have this feeling motivation is kind of like an orgasm. It comes and it goes. And if you'd like more of it, well, you're probably going to have to work for it. And that probably goes for both motivation and orgasms. So, I think that some people, when they look at what's happening with motivation for themselves, whether they're just starting, like, if they're just kind of wrapping their head around, I want to accomplish this for my body, I want to accomplish this for my health. Many of the things that Ruby and I have been talking about throughout this series, they feel like motivation is where it all begins. It's like the foundation starts with motivation, and it's like, that's really such a small part of it. And I don't want to say it's not important. Of course it's important. But, the one thing too is, and Ruby, I think you said this in a previous episode, but you were talking about how long you'd been a power lifter for, 7 years. And 7 years, for those that don't know, when it comes to like lifting heavy weights, when you really have to push your body to that extent, I can promise you, and I'm not somebody who's been a power lifter for 7 years, certainly not competitively, motivation's not always there. Sometimes you have to get in and you have to do really hard things on days that you really don't feel like it. And I would imagine those days are probably in greater quantity than people want to give them credit for. But, I've been lifting as part of my life. I've been lifting for well over 20 years. Motivation, it absolutely comes and goes, sort of like the way that I started this episode. And I'm one of those people that, exercise, for one, is not something that I get overjoyed about. It's, and I've said this before many times on the podcast, for me, it's a lot like brushing my teeth. I don't always enjoy it. It still has to be done. And so I try to find the most enjoyable way to do that. Of course, there's only so much enjoyment you can put into brushing your teeth, but, it helps that I own a gym, because then that removes one of my excuses. But that doesn't always remove the excuses. Sometimes being here in the gym and staying busy and having other things that I have to do for this business means that motivation can tank pretty easily. And there have absolutely been days where it's like, I know that I quote unquote should work out today, but I'm too busy, or I'm too tired, or I don't want to do it. And so we're going to try to dive into all that stuff. So Ruby, welcome back, and let's throw the mic back over to you.
I actually think that, in picking up a little correction there, that it's going to lead into a really good conversation. So I haven't actually been a powerlifter for 7 years. I've been lifting for 7 years. I started off obviously just going to the gym, and then somehow ended up into bodybuilding, somehow ended up into powerlifting, and now I don't even know what the heck I am anymore. I just do it. And I guess this is where the whole motivation comes from, because like I spoke about in one of the previous episodes we were doing in the series, I needed to cling to something external to kind of cement me to my audience on social media, to my audience everywhere. I'm like, I'm doing this regardless. And because I'm a stubborn personality type, it's like, I'm going to do it. But it's like I tied myself to that external reward. I'm going to talk about the psychology of all this, because it's really, like Jason said, it's really hard to talk about motivation without the psychology component. And I'm actually nerding out quite a lot on the neuroscience of so many different things. And I'm so glad you brought up this topic, because you reminded me how passionate I am about the whole like psychology of everything. Anyway, so through those phases that I went through, I clung to an identity, but the values were still the same. It was, I wanted to feel fulfilled. I wanted to feel accomplished. I wanted to show that I could achieve what I put my mind to. And it was all around the principle of, I wanted to better myself. I wanted to become stronger. I wanted, it's that pathway that we all pretty much start out with. And many roads lead to Rome. It's like the end goal's there, but the different ways of achieving such, it can change. Like, too many people cling so much to their initial values at the start. Like we spoke about in the second episode, when we were trying to clean up the whole calories and realizing that that's usually what gets people through the door. But you don't have to cling to that goal. You don't have to cling to that identity. And it is okay to then shift your focus. It is okay to then identify with a different like approach. And a lot of people find it hard to detach from those identities to then move forward. And it's all about that perception of no, be okay with it, because it shows that you are growing. It shows that you are reaching new levels and that you're actually tapping into that potential. And it's okay to now focus on different pursuits within the same direction, because motivation is like setting your GPS to some direction. But then, okay, motivation is the key that you put into the car. But the thing is, as soon as you start that car and get that spark, what's going to happen next? Like, the motivation is getting the car started, but you're going to need to actually get the drive to get the car to move. And I heard this thing that's like, so electricity needs conduction. I mean, with electricity, conduction needs potential first. So it's kind of the same thing when it comes to motivation. Like, at first, you need to realize that you have that potential there. If you don't believe in yourself first and believe that it's like you can accomplish it, where's the motivation going to come from? Are you going to really put everything you've got into achieving something that you don't think you can achieve? And I guess this all boils down to the whole identity thing and what it is you do in the process to be able to keep this motivation. Because people throw around the thing saying motivation is fickle, you can have it and then it leaves, but it's like, yeah, cool, but that's getting said too often now, but no one's getting the tools to then take that and move it forward, as in like, okay, cool, we know that motivation's fickle, we get in the start, but then what can we do with it? How can we keep it? How can I get this motivation back? And I guess that's what I really want to touch on in this conversation the most, because we mentioned it last episode. Catch yourself winning more. And there was this study, and it was with these kids. They were like, they enjoyed drawing, and they were giving gold stars on the drawings of the kids who like to draw. They originally already loved to draw, right? But then over time, getting this external reward of the gold star on their drawing, that's what they attached the sense of accomplishment of drawing, of that happiness, to that external reward. So as soon as they stopped receiving those gold stars, they stopped drawing. And I guess that's where we have to be really careful, like I mentioned before, about how much we link our internal dopamine hit to the external reward. Because if we're gonna, like, we're not always going to be getting this external reward. We don't always want to be chasing this or chasing that, because in the pursuit of trying to chase something, we miss life where it's currently at. And then if we're not going to get that, like, that immediate reward, or there is no actual external reward, how are we going to keep pushing ourselves? It's just like when we had this COVID crisis. Where was the external reward when we were all pretty much in lockdown? Like, who's motivated to go work out in their lounge room? And I guess this is where that whole internal reward system comes in, because all our rewards literally are internal anyway. Like, that gold star, that's not in essence, like, it is not really an external reward. It is an internal reward, because we're giving meaning to it. It is us who gives meaning to that gold star. So why can't we just reward ourselves along the way anyway? And that's the thing. We mention when we're struggling, we want to stay quiet about things that we're achieving, because we think that if we start celebrating now, well, what happens if we fall off? What happens if the next shoe drops? What happens if all of a sudden we lose motivation and then won't want to make it to the next step and the next step? We better not celebrate now, because what's going to happen next? What if we don't make it? And you can hear me in saying this, how ridiculous that sounds, because the whole reason we pursue something is so we can feel fulfilled. But if we're going to keep holding back our wins, holding back our sense of accomplishment because we don't want to make it known just in case our motivation falls off, then that car's not going to go very long because we're not rewarding ourselves along the way. We're keeping it back, and that's going to lead to us focusing on, again, how far we are away from the end, wherever the hell the end is, that we're not feeling fulfilled in the process. How can you keep doing something that you're not feeling fulfilled doing because you're withstanding it from yourself?
Yeah,
And
it's well. Let me interject here. So, and I, as you're talking about this, like it, I certainly, I mean, I understand all of it. I remember right after our son was born. So, my wife Marissa, we have Sebastian, who, as of this recording, is about to turn 4. So, right about 4 years ago, when he was brought into this world, as a parent, certainly as a new parent, all of a sudden your time is not your own anymore, and you start to find that, okay, things are shifting, certain priorities are shifting, our schedules are shifting, and certainly more of this, this is more on Marissa's shoulders than on mine because she's the one that has to do the breastfeeding and all that other stuff, and so her time definitely has different demands on it. But here I am, I still have to go to work, still have to try to get some quality sleep wherever I can so that I can come and perform at work. And so it's like, what about my own exercise? Like, what about me taking care of me? The things that we say to our clients, like, yeah, but you gotta take care of you. You gotta make sure that that's being handled too. And I remember that there were certain days that even though Marissa did the best she could to say, okay, listen, we're gonna try to handle all the things in the house so that you get sleep so that you can go to work, because at the time I'm the breadwinner, I'm the one that's providing for the home. But there were times that it was like, the only thing that I can like physically and mentally do right now is like one set of squats or one set of pull-ups. Like that's all I can handle anymore. Like, there was no way in hell that I was going to get through a full workout. And and I'm going to flip this back around to COVID too, because you've already sort of opened the door to COVID. When we took away all of our faculties, when we took away all the things that we were used to using, to exercise, to give ourselves that sense of fulfillment, and you're like, I'm sorry, you can't go to the gym for the next 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever the case is. God forbid your gym closed down forever. All of a sudden you're like, but what's going to motivate me? But how am I going to get back to the thing? You know what I mean? I don't have all the toys at my disposal. And I think one of the things that sort of helped me get through that phase of my life right after Sebastian was born was just the fact that I just kept a little something going. Like, there was like one little thing that I was doing physically for myself that was like, okay, you have that one positive. It's not much. It's not going to change your physique. You're not going to, you're not moving mountains with this. You're just getting the thing done. And it's just that one little check off the box that you're like, okay, then I got to get back to the other stuff that I have to do. I have to get back to helping Marissa with Sebastian, or I have to get back to, as soon as I'm done with work, I've got to go home and I've got to cook because she's already had her hands full all day long. So, if, like a lot of things, if we look at this stuff on a spectrum, there's going to be days where motivation runs high. Take advantage of that. And there's going to be days where motivation runs low, or where it's almost non-existent. And you have to make a choice. Is today the day that I'm going to go do the active thing because I know it's the quote unquote right thing to do? Or is today the day that I recover, because there's value in recovery too? When it comes to, big picture, long-term view of what we're trying to do for our progress and our mindset, and the way that you said it, fulfillment, what's providing that sense of fulfillment? Who gives us the gold star when nobody's watching? So, yeah.
now that you highlighted fulfillment, I don't like, well, it started off, this is how I became so clear on myself and actually can say that I feel free. Like, there are memes that are going around saying what self-care really is. It's actually having some form of self-discipline. It's being able to do that. And it's almost like that whole anti-diet kind of culture thing where people are shunning being strict with things. But sometimes it's that actually, no, all of the time, it's that structure that leads to freedom. Like you mentioned, with you needed to just do that as much as you could do to then go back and help with the kid. Well, why not use that little spurt of motivation to actually bring out a whiteboard, get some structure into your life and say, okay, so these are the must do's, these are the things that cannot be moved around. Like, these are my client blocks, this is when I open, this is when I need to be at work, this is when I need to pick up the kids, whatever things that are locked into routine, you have them on the whiteboard. And then for that week, whatever you do know, you write down when you're going to fit in your training session. Get that structure in your life. And yes, you can actually write down when you're going to go into the gym to do whatever it is, or do whatever it is to keep up your fitness or your health. Writing your meal, like when you're going to go meal prep. And yes, meal prepping may seem like it takes a lot of time, but you can simplify it. There are frozen veggies, there are tinned fruits, there are frozen fruits, there are 2 minute, 90-second, 1 minute not noodles, rice. There's like shit that makes stuff easier for you. Use it. Like, it's there for you to, like, just because it comes in a package doesn't mean it's artificial. Like, use that stuff to make your life easier. That's why it's there. Put that structure onto the whiteboard. The reason I go by a whiteboard, and if you could actually see the camera right now, you would see that I have about 10 whiteboards in my room. Whiteboards, you can get an eraser. You can rub off things, well, not an eraser, but you can wipe off things and you can reschedule things if you need to. It's there, and it's showing you that you can audit your week when needed. And it gives you that exhale, that you're not pressured to do something that is probably 3 days into the week may not actually seem feasible anymore. But that structure is everything. Structure gives you freedom. And I say it all the time about my food. Yes, I actually track my food meticulously. People can shun it, people can judge me. I don't care, because it gives me freedom. I feel free. I don't have to worry about what the hell I need to prep for the day, what the hell I need to buy from the shops one day, organize the other day, because I prep my days 7 days in a row. My meal plan is there that I fit to my macros, so I don't actually track my food. I track it 1 day a week, prep my meals for that, and it's done. Like, sometimes you need to be okay getting uncomfortable to then make yourself more comfortable for the week. And that's the best time to use that motivation to make shit easier for yourself later on.
Well, yeah,
Like it
and
was,
it's, I mean, essentially you're talking about um, delaying or removing decision fatigue. And
mm,
I mean, my gosh, we hear about this all the time. I think probably the person that sticks out the most to me, certainly in our industry, would be John Goodman, from the PTDC, because, he has said multiple times, he's like, there's like one brand of shirt that I buy, and I buy 3 colors, and I buy a few different sizes, and that's what I wear, because like I have to make big decisions all day long. The one thing I don't want to think about is, oh my gosh, what am I going to wear? And you were talking about the studies with the rewards, but it's like, there's also studies that have been done when we're provided too many choices. When you have too many choices, it's fatigue, and all of a sudden you have this paralysis. And it's like, I forget that, I think they did the study with jam. So like, if they had 6 varieties of jam, people could make a decision sooner. But when you go to the grocery store and they have 30 different versions of jam, you just sit there and look, and you're like, I don't know what to buy because there's 30 versions of jam, and anymore, because it's 2021. But yeah, does this one have more sugar than the other? Maybe I should be concerned about the sugar.
yeah.
So, but it's true. You think about all the decisions that you have to make in the span of a day. Of course, your motivation is tanked. Of course, your willpower is tanked, because you're just in choice mode all day long. And it's like, have some systems, just like what you're talking about with the meal prepping. For you, it may sound to a certain person like, oh my gosh, that's so much work to be able to track my calories and to do the meal prep. Yeah, but it depends on what you're working from. It depends on what those choices provide for you in terms of freedom. But that's
And I
freedom
only
on
do it
your
one,
terms.
yeah. And I only do it 1 day a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like, if you don't want to do that yourself, that's where you can actually invest in someone to sit with you to work out where you should be. Or you can go into, I would never ever 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 like blurt out a macro calculator ever, but I have actually discovered one which is pretty damn good with what they do. Precision Nutrition actually have one up now, and they will actually show you like palm sizes and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's not going to get you to really refine your body and your goals because it's working off like average numbers. It's not giving you grams and stuff, but that's usually what that's typically what a busy person can usually handle at the max. It's a starting point. So if you're not where you can be positioned to actually afford a coach, to afford a nutritionist, to understand macros for yourself, which I would actually rather pay someone to do something for me that I don't understand, like my accountant. Like, there's no way I'm looking at my tax. She can do that. Like, if you don't want to worry about all that, then invest in it or be okay with settling for a little bit less, but it makes it easier for you.
Right.
Like, meet yourself with where you're at. And now I can go back to the point that I was going to bring in with, if you are struggling on your journey with motivation or whatever it is, you need to root yourself into the present. As soon as you root yourself into the present, you're okay, realize how far you've come, but you need to internally reward yourself for not only how far you've come, but for the fact that you're putting in effort to then go the next step and the next step. Reward yourself for the smallest things of even the thought of trying, because some people haven't even made it that far yet. And then break down what's next into tiny chunks. The more that you will allow yourself to continue forward, which is through the power of the mind, you will yourself to power forward. You'll realize that how you feel now may not be indicative of how you feel in 30 minutes. Like, yeah, you might feel blur now, but if you just keep that momentum going and you reward yourself along the way and you recognize your thoughts like waves and let them pass over, grab yourself out of the moment and actually shift your perception. I'm going to give a real life example of this, but you start shifting those thoughts and you'll realize that in 30 minutes you can actually power through again. And if not, then that's okay. You can use that as a learning curve, a lesson. There is no such thing as failure. There's never such thing as failure. We did a whole podcast, our first one on failure. Failures, I love failing because I learn from failures. Failures are feedback. Failures show me what I need to strengthen. It's showing me that I have so much potential because I just failed something. Wow, I have something I can improve on. That's going to give me this much more of a boost. So I was running today and I'm feeling extremely fatigued with my runs. And I feel like that's because my kilometers of volume are really long. But I'm like, nah, I'm just going to count this as a deload. I'm just going to do 5 kilometers. I get to 5 kilometers. I'm like, I'll do my run walks. I'll walk for a little bit and then I'll do my next 3. Next 4. Nah, yeah. I just started running and then I'm just like deciding in my head next 4, next 3. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going to cut it after I finish this 3 and that's it. But then I remembered all the studies that I've been doing about this stuff that we're talking about right now, because I used to try to study as much as I can on the brain, because the brain is literally everything. If you want to succeed in anything, it all comes down to your brain. If you want your body to do something, it all comes down to the brain. Everything is the brain. So I brought myself back to the studies of, okay, I need to reward myself in the process. I need to talk myself up in the process. I need to stop having these negative loops of I want to quit. I'm just going to go through another kilometer, which is another 1.25 of this block. And then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And then it's going to be my walk break. And then I'm going to keep doing it until I get to the end. And okay, I maybe did not do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but I did 5, 3, 3, 1. And that was okay for me. And I did a lot more than I initially set out to do when I said that I was going to do 5 kilometers. And we need to be okay with that and not beat ourselves up over it, because I definitely didn't, because I actually cheered myself about the fact that I didn't do just 5K and I did more than 10K. And that is a massive thing in itself. Whereas I could be like, no, I've done more than that before. Like, no, be freaking kind to yourself. If you're not rewarding yourself along the way, what's going to make you want to do it the next time you set out for a run? Next time you set out to go for a walk? Next time you set out to go do the grocery shopping and actually buy healthy food because you let a little cake bar slip in there? Like, at least your trolley isn't full of bloody snacks and everything. Like, you did something. Like, look at what you did do, not what you didn't do. It's, you don't just relate it to running, relate it to everything in life. Because there was another study of a guy that was so accomplished, but the thing is, back to the identity, he identified himself as someone who was so motivated, so full of drive, and that's what everyone knew him as. And then all of a sudden, he's stuck. Several years later, accomplishing everything in life, he's stuck. And he wanted to run a marathon, but he settled for, I think it was just the 1 kilometer. He couldn't push himself to do more. And then there was something with business where he could have taken an offer, but he was just happy with where he was at. And he's trying to figure out why. And it's because this identity of being so motivated and having this big drive, the way he got to where he was then was because he saw that what he was doing was working, which was the fact that he was holding back the sense of fulfillment. He was saying, no, I'm not going to reward myself now because then I might lose my motivation and not move forward. So because he was refraining all of that fulfillment, he no longer had the attachment of hard work or pushing through to fulfillment. And why would you even bother trying to do anything if you're not going to feel fulfilled at the end? Like, what's the whole point of achieving something if you're not going to feel fulfilled? Feel fulfilled. Well, that's a tongue twister. But like, it's as soon as you realize that there is going to be a sense of fulfillment, you are going to be more motivated to do it. And it all comes down to our values. And if you think about back to what I wanted to say when you first stopped what you were saying, I said, I don't believe in the word goals. I say it, but I don't say it with the intent of saying you have goals. When I had my vision board, this is what I call it, the vision board. When I had my first awareness of I need a vision board, this was 2 years ago, and that's what led me to feeling free like I am now. Because that vision board allowed me to actually sit with myself and realize, okay, so what the hell am I doing anyway? How is it I want to feel? And my values, my vision board has not changed in 2 years. Because although my path has changed, I'm not bodybuilding, I'm not powerlifting, I'm not being some weird CrossFit athlete, I'm not doing any of those things I did back then. I'm not identifying myself as anything, but I'm doing what I need to do to uphold those values. And values are generalizations. They're generalizations about experiences that are important to us. So if I'm experiencing something that makes me happy, makes me joyful, I am going to value that. But the actual value, if you dig deeper, is I value feeling happy. I value feeling fulfilled. I value feeling decluttered. And that was a big thing for me. I love feeling decluttered. But then as soon as you get those values, you need to actually break it down into action steps, things that you can actually move towards. How can I feel decluttered? I physically decluttered my wardrobes. I physically did a lot of decluttering. But decluttering to me meant having systems in place, because systems make for a less cluttered mind. And that's again where it comes to, okay, so how can I make myself feel less cluttered so then I can actually have clarity on my direction? And I reckon everybody can benefit from systems to have that clarity, because if you lose clarity in the direction that you're heading and how you want to feel, how are you meant to reward yourself for the many steps along the way? It's like, okay, you're in the Wizard of Oz. You're following the yellow brick road. If you're going to stay so tunnel visioned on just getting to the greenhouse at the end, you're going to miss all the scenery. You're not going to actually experience anything. And if something happens along the way, like what's the whole point going forward? Like, okay, you're focused on there, but if the thing in front of you is bigger than the thing inside of you, why would you want to continue forward? Whereas if you're actually enjoying the scenery, you're like, oh, there's actually stuff around me. I'll go enjoy this until this moment in time passes, and then I'll continue on my path. And I guess bringing it back to practical steps of actually staying on track. Make your goal part of your routine. Make your vision part of your routine. What is something you're doing at the moment with like looking after the kids, looking after the family? It was already part of your routine. It was just that you did not have as much time to make for it. So you did need to set reminders. You probably needed a diary. You needed to schedule things in. You needed to make sure that everything was aligned to allow you to still put yourself first. Because if you didn't put yourself first in that little moment, you wouldn't have felt your best when you're around the kids. You wouldn't have felt your best doing all these other things. And then you would have had resentment for your wife in the end, because you would blame yourself, but then also blame her for not allowing you to continue forward, to keep putting yourself first. And I see that happen with a lot of mothers. They start to resent themselves because all of a sudden they're in this mess because all they did was just focus on everyone else but themselves.
Right.
And mindfulness is a big thing. Like I said about rooting yourself in, if you think about being calm and actually taking a big breath in, big breath out, letting your shoulders fall, letting your jaw fall, how many of you can say that you feel like that a majority of the day? Because a lot of the day we are tense, and that stops us from just being with ourselves, from realizing how fast we're going and how much we need to actually pull back. Because if we're always go, go, go all of the time, how are we meant to actually stop to give ourselves praise for how far we've come? How are we supposed to stop to recalibrate ourselves in our journey? We can get so lost in the puzzle because we haven't recalibrated, because we're so busy going. And then in all of that going, you forget to put yourself first. You start to let things slip in. Your boundaries start to fall down. That's actually a really good point too. Make sure that you have your boundaries. And if you don't respect your boundaries, no one else will. If you don't know your boundaries, how do you expect anyone else to know them? But if you're not recalibrating yourself and rooting yourself where you are right now and letting yourself slow down sometimes, anything that you have set up as structure will start to crumble. And that's why it's so important to make mindfulness, make some form of putting yourself first as part of your non-negotiables. And I may forget that I naturally do this, but I naturally make my workout time my self-care time, and that's exactly what it is. But when I did before get overwhelmed, I would check my phone while I'm training. I would think about this client. I would think about something I had to do, and I'd let other things infiltrate my personal space, which is that time. And it's so easy to do. And then as soon as you start to let all these outside factors, all these anxiety stirring things come in, you start to lose that passion for that thing. You start to lose that motivation for that thing, and you just feel blur, because it's not what you're used to anymore. It's not that thing that you do to make yourself feel relaxed, to make yourself feel focused, to take yourself away from the busyness of life. It's become part of that. It's become part of the blur. Now, the next little practical tip is positive self-talk. Like we said, it's important. It is way more than important. It's probably the biggest factor to where we self-sabotage, because as soon as we start to negatively talk ourselves and berate ourselves down, like, where are we seeing anything positive that we did? That's when we start to get into whole self-talk of, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I nothing I do is ever good enough. Okay, so if you are never proud of where you are, how are you meant to allow yourself to continue? Because if you're, okay, a lot of the time people always feel like they aren't enough. Nothing is ever good enough that they do, or just in general, because they're too busy comparing themselves to everyone else. We spoke about this in the other podcast we did, but if you're so busy comparing yourself to everyone else and what they're accomplishing, you're never going to feel good enough.
Right.
You're never going to feel enough, because you don't know their backstory. You don't know their lifestyle. You're going to constantly feel like you're behind the wagon. And how the hell are you supposed to feel motivated when you are constantly talking yourself down, constantly berating yourself? You're stabbing yourself in the foot every single time you do that. And the more that you focus on doing that, the more that you repeat doing that, where do you think all the energy is going to go? It's going to be all that negative energy. And negative energy doesn't have a force with determination to move forward. Negative energy just wants to slump, and it's just going to keep feeding that negative energy. And we all know that your vibe attracts your tribe. If you're going to be this slump, you're going to start filling your feed with all these things that are trying to encourage you to be happy, or all these things that are trying to reassure you or validate your stance. Most of the time, we look for things to validate our feelings. So then we become comfortable with being this slump person instead of feeling that fulfillment and gratitude along the way. And this brings me to a conversation that made me want to pull my hair out. I had a girl say to me, because I've been working with this girl on her mindset for God knows how long, like 3 months. But there was one, actually 2 months really. But she said something and I was just like, I've been saying this for months and you're saying it now. Like, I don't feel the importance of doing gratitude because I don't see how it leads to my physical results. I don't see any physical benefit from practicing gratitude. And it's just like the foundation of everything comes down to actually being grateful for where you are right now, being positive. Because if you're going to just have a negative mindset about everything, you're never going to feel satisfied with anything. Like, yeah, you're great to start with, but very soon that car is gonna stutter. It's gonna because the engine you had in it was not high quality. It was not polished. It was not premium. You put in a shitty engine. You need to put in a high quality engine if you want a high quality drive. And you are going to need to keep fueling it up. It is a process. You can't just fuel it up once and then expect the car to do the whole trip. And that's the thing. Motivation is a skill. It really is a skill. And mindfulness helps with that because it brings you back to the present moment and it allows you to be grateful. But that's also where, like, you can see training, you can see your nutrition, you can see all of these other things in life as skills that you are developing that aren't just pertaining to getting stronger in the gym, to building more muscle. Those skills you can use in life. Like, if you can push through that last heavy set and you want to quit, but you keep pushing through, you're showing yourself that you can do hard things. I can say for myself that the gym has made me a lot more resilient in life. Like, I can't even recognize the way that, yeah, I was going to ask you the same question. Like, there are things that I've overcome in the gym, I've overcome in my life I never thought possible, that haven't just been inside the gym or about food. It's shown me how you do one thing is how you do everything, really. Because if you're going to let that one thing slip, like, I was talking to one of my friends who was doing comp prep, like, she broke down in tears over a banana. And she was 2 weeks out from comp. She broke down in tears over a banana because her boyfriend was eating a banana. She even got on the phone to her coach to yell at him saying, I want the fucking banana! Like, she told me the whole story. And
I actually have a very similar story to share, but go ahead.
she went ballistic over this one banana, and then at the end of telling me the story and how her boyfriend thought that she was some nutter and she God knows what, but she goes to me, if I let myself have that banana or even a half of that banana, what that is like giving me permission to have anything else. Because if I say, oh, I can just have this, it's just one, I can do that with everything else. And that's ruining the flow. That's ruining, like, that's a skill that she's developing with discipline that she can put to everything. And I know this girl really well, and she is disciplined in, like, pretty much every area of life. She's so successful in her work. She's doing another degree in uni. Like, when you actually work that skill, you can apply it to anything else. And it's powerful because it's the same thing when you see people struggling with overeating or binge eating. They refrain themselves from foods. And if I say don't think about a turkey sandwich, you're going to think about a turkey sandwich. Like, it's just inevitable. But the thing is, if you refrain yourself for so long, just like when you negative talk yourself for so long, but when you have just that one glimpse of dopamine, that dopamine hit, because you've held back all this dopamine, you have that one dopamine hit, you're gonna open a can of worms and just keep on going. And that's that like dopamine is so powerful, and it works with motivation as well. But something I learned with dopamine is that you trigger the response for dopamine when you're focusing on something, and you can't focus on something if you're not mindful, if you're not grounding yourself, if you're in this busyness of life, and if you don't know what it is you're focusing on. But when you have that direction and you have the systems, and you keep repeating the systems and not try to complicate things, like there may be some people that want to be like a friggin' master chef. Like, no, keep shit simple until you can add stuff in. And it's as soon as you start to make things complex that you may start to lose the rails. And it happens all the time. I'm sure you see it all the time. Like, people will start to gather momentum and they're like, what can I add in next? What can I do next? Oh, I need to create this really awesome dish. Oh, I saw Susan put this up on Instagram. I need to make my dish look like hers. When that's just adding more stress to the plate. And I think this is the most important thing when it comes to motivation, is realize what you can actually do without adding more stress to your system already. Because if you're already just barely hanging on, and you're actually doing the small steps, but hey, you think progress isn't coming fast enough, so you want to add something in a little extra, you were just barely hanging on to start with. Like, where do you think you're going to go? But you need to realize you can achieve the end result. And this is where the faith comes in. Because if you don't have the faith that you can achieve the end result, you're going to want to either give up or go harder. And either way, you're not continuing forward, because if you go harder, you're going to slip. If you give up, you just gave up. So I guess attaining self-discipline comes through that active goal setting. It comes through that scheduling, that structuring, which also comes through prioritizing and knowing what to prioritize, which comes back to having a vision board. How do you want to feel? What is it that you have to do to feel that way? And have multiple modalities of feeling that way. Because if you're only going to tie your identity to being this person and then you lose that, or you tie your identity to whatever it is, like the goal, like you tie your identity to the scale going down. There's another example. And then all of a sudden you finish that fat loss phase, it's time to have a diet break, or it's time to do this, or something happens and you can't actively chase it anymore. All of a sudden you're going to lose yourself because you have nothing else to focus on. Like the 12-week challenges.
Right.
You identify yourself with trying to finish that, and then what?
It's, you said it a little while ago, and I wanted to come back to it, and this might be kind of a way to sort of pull this to something of a close, but, at risk of bastardizing the work, the book that we reference as coaches a lot is Carol Dweck's Mindset. So when you think about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, how easily, how flexible can you pivot what you're expecting out of yourself. And you had sort of touched on it too. You'd sort of been involved in different areas of fitness. You were the power lifter, you were the bodybuilder. Now you have slightly more emphasis on endurance activities. Some of that may not have even taken place if, say, the pandemic hadn't happened, where you were sort of forced to go, okay, well, I still have goals. I still have things that I need to accomplish. I still need to find a comfort zone to step out of so that I can chase the next thing. And who knows, Ruby, when I circle back to you in 3-4 years, what will that next thing be? And so it sort of made me think too, and in a way to sort of apply this real world, because yes, coaches are kind of like our clients, and we kind of aren't, because there's a part of our puzzle that we've solved, and then parts that we're continuing to improve on, because we're still humans. The person that I was in my 20s, when I first got into fitness and was knee deep in drugs, that person that was motivated to do fitness type things was a very different person. When I got clean and I had my first child, and Jackson was born when I was 32, things shifted. All of a sudden, it was like I'm motivated by different things. I'm expecting different things out of my body. And then, like, I started this business, a year after Jackson was born. And as a fitness business owner, like a brick and mortar, business owner, I had certain expectations. I need to look a certain way. I need to achieve a certain amount of strength. And that's where, you start to look at those different measuring sticks. Okay, well, if you're a male and you're this age and you weigh about this much, you should be able to deadlift about this much and squat about this much and bench press about this much. And it was like, how close am I to those numbers? Okay, let's try to push it. Well, that was all fine and good when those were the metrics that I was chasing, up until I had my first injury. And then all of a sudden you change and you're like, okay, wait a second. What am I motivated by now? Like, now that I've had this first injury, what do I do? Do I dial it back? Do I try to figure out how do I change my mechanics? That became the motivation, was, okay, we don't want to be injured again, so let's change the motivation. Now the motivation is, how do we do this appropriately so that we don't get hurt? Well, then I had my second injury, and it was like, okay, we need to shift this again, because at this point, now it's affecting the way that I do my job. It's affecting these other parts of my life. Like, if you can't bend over, you can't hold your child. That's a problem. So then, as I've gotten older, not always wiser, but certainly older, again, the game continues to shift. So if my whole identity, this sort of goes back to what we were talking about, in the last episode, if my whole identity was Jason as the lifter, I would be continuously disappointed in myself. Lifting is just part of what I do, but I don't get to use all the same things that I did before. So I don't pull from the floor anymore, certainly with not any kind of respectable weight, but I do other things that challenge my body. And it's like, okay, well, number one, I have to listen to my body. Like, what is my body capable of doing right now? What are things that are low risk of injury for me? Learning how to self-regulate, so that, when I take stress and lack of sleep and what's happening with business and what's happening with my marriage, what's happening with my relationship with my boys, you take all these things part and parcel of, the snapshot of my life. And it's like, okay, well, for me right now, like as of this moment, what my workout looks like is very unglamorous. There's nothing flashy about it, but you know what? It's low risk of injury, and I'm seeing progress. And that's where the mindset is right now. So like when I think about, and we're going to sort of pull this back around to the beginning, when I think about motivation, the motivation is just do those things. You're motivated to do the work that is low risk of injury, where you can see small incremental, pieces of improvement. Because at this point, I've spent 25 years working out, close to 25 years working out. And that's a long time. And you learn a lot about yourself and you learn your limitations. And I think that once you can respect what your body is capable of at that moment in time, then that becomes the motivating thing. And so now it's not about necessarily chasing PRs. It's about, how do I live a better life? How do I live, and I'm going to use your term, how do I be fulfilled? How do I get fulfillment right now? And so right now it's just doing these very simple things, and respecting where my body and my mind are right now, and knowing when to push the meter and learning when to pull it back. But if we're looking on things on the spectrum, I don't shift far left or far right anymore. Things just kind of stay in that sort of, what's the term? The messy middle, and I just kind of little deviations. And just, that for me, and I'll get your final take on this, but as we pull this to a close, but that for me is where the motivation is. And if you ask me 6 months from now where things are at, it's probably going to have a slight change to it, but not dramatic changes, unless of course we're in a, dealing with the pandemic.
That's the thing. Like, it doesn't need a massive overhaul, and everything that you just said then points back to that vision board idea. You value the family, you value your kids, you want to provide a good life for them, but you also want to see, I heard you say it so many times, I want to see what my body can do. Let's see how I can challenge my body now. And that's the thing. It's the value is in feeling like you're challenging your body, in feeling like you are becoming a better version of yourself. And you're doing it to be a better you for the family. You're running the business the way it is, and the motivation for that's because you find not only passion in it, but it's providing something for your family, and those are your values. And the thing is, if all you do is compare yourself to other people, you could have been really proud of your progress one day, and then all of a sudden you're driving home and you're just feeling like the progress you were proud of once upon a time is no longer good enough. And this is where it comes to just stop victimizing yourself. We bully ourselves enough as it is. Stop victimizing yourself. Learn to compare yourself to yourself. Everyone's journey is different, and the person you're comparing yourself to has walked a completely different journey, different background, different tools, different skill set. And who cares about how much weight Sue lost or how much Jeff is lifting? Because they're not you, and they don't have the same starting point as you. They probably don't even have the same end goal as you. And comparing your current self to yourself is the only way you're going to actually start being able to have the tools to maintain that motivation, because then all the goalposts, all the visions, all the everything that you set is based upon yourself. And you know yourself more than anyone else. You don't know Sue and you don't know Jeff, but you do know you. And when problems arise, when bottlenecks arise, you can either look for solutions or you can keep complaining and get nowhere. And as I say it all the time, if you're going to come to me with something that's a bottleneck, come with a solution, because you need to ask yourself better questions. And until you ask yourself better questions, you're going to keep getting stuck, because you're not being aware, you're not rooting yourself into the present and looking in that next block and the next block ahead. You're everywhere and you're not decluttered. So we talk about the messy middle, but let's talk about the golden middle. Goldilocks, because Goldilocks can't do the porridge that's too hot or too cold, but she can do the one that's just right. And it's not a mess. It's the one that is her mess. It's perfect for her. So it's the Goldilocks middle. Don't think about being in the middle, avoiding extremes as a mess, as a messy middle, because it's not anymore. That's where the color is. There's black, there's white, and there's color. And color is beautiful. We need to color ourselves more. We need to color our lives more, because that's exactly the choice that Goldilocks would have made. So figure out what it is that makes you feel alive. Figure out what it is that is the basis behind everything that you do. Why? Okay, cool, you want to lose weight, but why? Is it to feel more confident? Is it to be able to wear those shorts? Figure out what it is that makes you do what you do, and realize that there is depth to that, because everything else that's just the surface. But as soon as you get deeper, that is your motivation, because you're rewarding yourself. You're feeling great along the way. You're doing hard things. You can reward yourself, because that's accomplishment. That is fulfillment. And that's the golden middle, because you're doing it for you.
Ruby, this has been awesome. I knew it would be. That's why we made it happen. So thank you for taking the journey with me. Definitely a lot of things that we sifted through in 4 episodes. So thank you so much. It was a blast. I really appreciate you taking the time over these 4 episodes with me.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. For those of you listening, hope you have an opportunity to download, subscribe, share with your friends. If you have an extra moment, please leave us an iTunes review. We will catch you next time.